time. So, hello and welcome. My name is Roy Atwood. I'm the president of Reformed Evangelical Seminary. I'm delighted to have you all join us. We have a number of people joining live right now, and they will be joining us through the recording, watching it later. So welcome to you all. Our hope is to introduce you to the seminary and to be able to answer as many questions as we might have anticipated for you, and also have a little time for Q&A at the end as time allows. I'll do a brief overview, flyover of the programs and mission, vision, and all of that. We'll introduce some of the people connected to the seminary. And I'll start with this PowerPoint slide just sort of guide us through. So let me just highlight here, if I can get it to move. Highlight the various elements of our planned session today. At the center of it will be, of course, some of the resources we have available, programs and tuition fees, those sorts of important details. But again, we want to introduce the sort of personal side of it and mission side of it as well. So let me begin by highlighting the mission and vision of the seminary. Our goal is to assist the church in equipping pastors and leaders for orthodoxy and orthopraxy rooted in Reformed Catholicity. That's a long-winded way of saying we want to help the church, and we want to do it in a way that is focusing on the local church more than the institution of the seminary itself. Our goal is to help, smaller churches at a distance where they may not have any resources available to them, or where the church simply does not have the staffing or support base to do some of its own in-church training. We're trying to help churches provide the kind of seminary education, theological, biblical studies that are necessary to grow up the next generation of pastors and leaders. So our target is really less you as individual students and more the churches to which you belong, and trying to help them equip you and others for the work of ministry. Our vision is really to bring the experienced pastors and educators alongside these congregations for this robust training, teaching of biblical and theological studies, and to keep you rooted with your pastor, your local home church pastor, rather than you having to go off to some other place to study, leaving home and community behind. We want to keep you rooted in your local community and provide this education to you, bringing it to you right where you live and work and have your being. Our board of directors is officially 7 members. Right now we have 6. They're seeking the 7th to replace someone who just recently had to step down. But our current 6 are Timothy Vandenbroek, who is the chairman of the board and also on our executive committee. He's an elder at Trinity Reformed Church in Moscow. Pastor Bo Cogbill is the secretary of the board and on the executive committee as well. He's the pastor of Reformation Covenant Church in Oregon City. And Steve Jeffrey, also on the executive committee, is pastor of All Saints Presbyterian in Fort Worth, Texas, which will be the site of our seminary retreat later in June. The 3 of the 4 elected board members are Virgil Hurt, Randy Booth, and Sebastian Smolarz. Virgil is a pastor in Lynchburg, Virginia. Randy is a pastor in Nacogdoches, Texas, and please pray for him because he's had neck surgery, and we just heard that he had a mild heart attack recently. So please remember him in your prayers. And then Sebastian is our most recent addition, replacing Ralph Smith from Japan. Sebastian is the pastor of the Evangelical Reformed Church in Wrocław, Poland. So those 3 are 3 of the 4 elected members of the board. Our administration is lean. I'm not terribly lean, but the administration is lean. I'm the president, of course, and I also coordinate the areas of church history and church enrichment. CJ Bowen, who's with us tonight, is the director of student development and coordinates the systematic theology, church life, and pastoral theology academic areas. Lauren, who is our go-to person for everything that makes the place run, is the registrar and bursar, and she's based in Oregon City as well. And Bo Cogbill coordinates the biblical counseling. Britton Brewer, who's with us this evening, is one of our instructors and coordinates Greek and New Testament. And John Decker coordinates Hebrew and Old Testament and is a pastor in Eugene. Britton's in Oregon City as well. So those are our key people. Okay. So I'll turn this part of it over to CJ to talk about our programs.
Thank you, Dr. Atwood. Welcome to all of you. We're glad you came knocking here on our digital doorway. I'm going to introduce the programs of study that we offer, as well as give you a little bit of insight into how we do what we do before turning it over to one of our instructors and one of our students to give you the inside scoop on that front. But we read in 1 Timothy 4:16, Paul writes, "Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by so doing you will both save yourself and your hearers." And that sort of dual emphasis on your life and your doctrine is one that we're very interested in supporting through what we call our whole life pedagogy. We're trying to, yes, inform and instruct and provide a great deal of information, but we also want there to be a component of formation of human beings and churchmen that doesn't happen well online. But we want to marry those two together in all that we're doing. So RES provides a reformed theological education while allowing ministerial students and others to stay in their own church context, to stay in your place while you pursue further education. We recognize that knowing the Greek verbs and systematic theology and the matters of biblical counseling, those are important, but so is your family, the work that you're already doing, and the church that you're already a part of. And so our goal is to raise up ministers for the church. As Dr. Atwood was already saying, we want a theologically informed cadre of ministers, not an ivory tower community of independent researchers. Academics is a wonderful gift to the church, and there are many institutions that make that central to their mission. It's important to our mission, but the pastoral ministry is the heart and soul of what we're particularly trying to do. So the goal is to not raise up freelance ministers for hire, but to equip you to serve your church where you are. And so we have these 3 degree programs. The MDiv program, 90 credits, is the flagship program that we have. Most of our current students are in this program. We also offer a Master of Christian Studies and the Certificate of Christian Studies that you see there on your screen with different roles in the church in mind for each of those. Those degrees do work well together. We see a little bit of a breakdown here now on the screen. They're designed to merge into each other. And so at times we've had students in one or another slot and transferring back between them. Those transitions aren't automatic. They require some conversation, but it is available as your particular calling and discernment unfolds, and where you find that maybe you thought you were coming to shore up your knowledge, to teach Sunday school and aim at the CCS, and through that process find that there's actually a greater calling in the life of the church, and soon you head towards a Master's of Divinity. The classes that you'll be taking largely overlap to make that as straightforward as possible. The MDiv program requires the biblical languages and the pastoral theology classes, and that's the main differentiation between that and the MCS and CCS, as well as simply just the number of courses required. As you look there at the breakdown, we should also just note there are required courses in each of those major subject areas, but they've also got space for elective work as well. So those are the degree programs. That's something of the breakdown, the languages, biblical studies, systematics, and so forth. And here now you can see the typical academic calendar for the schedule that we follow. 3 major terms, Trinity, Incarnation, and Resurrection, are going to be 10 weeks long with an 11th week for exams. And then Pentecost, or the summer schedule, condenses that into intensives over 6 weeks. Occasionally, you can see at the far right there in purple, we do offer jumpstart courses, usually 2-3 days of refresher and help to get going, especially if these are skills you've not touched on in a while. And then our typical patterns take over for that 11-week cycle is the norm, with breaks for the summer as well as Advent and Christmas season. We're structured more around the church calendar than a typical academic calendar, and that's just something to note and be aware of in seeing how we tend to operate there. So we are an online institution. We're using technology to connect the students and the instructors, but we're not trying to replace personal interaction with content. So we prioritize live lectures. You're not watching recordings. That option is available if necessary in limited cases. But our goal is that you'll have live face-to-face interaction with your instructors and with other students. So in this virtual classroom environment, RES is prioritizing these interactive discussions rather than simply viewing a pre-recorded lecture. So we're trying to use technology for education and not just observation. This isn't passive, this is active learning that we're calling on. And this mode of delivery, the online mode, makes seminary affordable as well as accessible, leaving you in place where you are. Now, this also enables us to draw from a wide range of pastors, teachers, seminary instructors from across the country and even internationally, and who is available to teach for us, and the various professors and pastors that we've asked to provide instruction. To give you more on that, to give you what RES is like from the perspective of an instructor, I'll turn it over to Britton at this point.
Thank you, CJ. Fellas, it's good to be with you all. As Roy said, I am a New Testament lecturer. I teach primarily New Testament classes. I also teach some systematic theology, and I am the area coordinator for the New Testament. So I oversee finding faculty, looking at syllabi, etc. TJ, I heard that you're from Spring Hill, Tennessee. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I grew up in Franklin, and I'm going to blow your mind. I went to Eagle's Nest Academy, which is the predecessor to the Classical Academy where St. Mark's meets.
St. Mark met there until very recently, yes.
Oh, that's right. That was really recent. Yeah. Well, I know a
Yes.
lot of people in your church, and I know Spring Hill very well. So I'm
Nice.
glad to hear a Tennessean is in our midst. So as CJ said, we do an online live lectures. I was part of RTS for a long time. I not only did my seminary there, but I worked for the online department. And the online department there does recorded. A lot of seminaries have moved to recorded lectures and sort of self-paced education. And what that does is it allows students to move through the material quite rapidly at their convenience. But it loses most, if not all, of where the real quality lies in theological instruction and theological education. And so the live lecture format is able to match really that of a normal classroom. Like I said, I did my MDiv at RTS, and I would say, although I was not an instructor there, for the most part, the live lectures, interactions with students, etc., have been comparable, if not equitable, to the experience I had at RTS. So it's a way of keeping students engaged, not just listening to lectures, but actually engaged in discussion. A number of our courses, because of the format that we have, adopt a seminar style as well, not just lectures from the professor, but seminar as y'all, as students, discuss a text or a series of texts. One professor who I think highly of said that one of the things we want to do is not just teach you a bunch of information that y'all are then going to forget. And a lot of that information is going to be available to you in your various introductory handbooks, your commentaries that you'll be using, etc. But one of the things we want to be doing is teaching you how to use certain tools, teaching you how to think well, teaching you how to read well, especially since our calling as ministers centers around one particular text, the Holy Scripture. So our courses are a mix of lecture, of seminar style. Oftentimes there are group discussions that are brought in to the classroom, excuse me. In terms of the quality of work that is expected of you, as CJ said, we believe academia and the academic calling of a minister is important. I know Roy has said we're not raising up ivory tower eggheads, but ministers. Nevertheless, the ministry is a learned profession. I believe B.B. Warfield said that. And this is graduate level work. And so what we expect of our students is graduate level work. We understand that there are limitations because we don't have a library. There are resources available to y'all, but you will be pushed to challenge yourself, challenge you in your thinking, challenge you in your writing, challenging you in your ability to engage with texts. In my experience, as students have come up against that, it's been a very helpful and sanctifying thing, even not only in their hearts, but in their minds. One of the things that I'm going to do here in the chat is send a syllabus from a previous class that I taught, just to give you an idea of what the classroom is like, what the expectations are like. Generally with our courses, there's about Lauren, you can correct me here, CJ, you can correct me here, but my understanding is it's about 500 pages of reading per credit hour with a total of 20 hours of lecture material. So basically 2 hours a week for 10 weeks. That sounds like a lot, but it's very doable. Most students are able to keep up with that well. And you're doing a lot of writing, you're doing a lot of reading, you're doing a lot of engaging with these texts, because the process of becoming a minister, this process of growing into the pastoral ministry, is really a process of learning how to think and learning how to think biblically. And that's what we want to equip you with. One of my former students is here as the student presenter, and I hope that I haven't caused him some trauma with this syllabus from my Christology class. And he can speak much more candidly, perhaps from his experience as a student. But we really are striving to equip you with the tools that you'll need moving into the ministry, training you to think, training you to communicate, training you to have your minds transformed by the Word of God, whether we're engaging biblical studies, whether engaging languages, whether engaging church history, systematic theology, counseling, anything. We want to have our minds renewed so we can discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And it's a joy to be able to do it and to be able to serve alongside these people at RES. Matt, I hope that I haven't said anything that you're going to contradict, or at least make me look bad.
No, and quite the contrary. And unless anybody thinks that I'm kissing up to a former professor, I actually didn't check the attendees list and didn't know he was going to be here today. So remember that when I tell you what follows. As we've said, this is a hybrid model that requires aligned people, to make it work and to make it impactful in the lives of our students and our families and our churches and our cities and our country. Honestly, I want to tell you, and I promise I will be brief and keep the time. I want to tell you just 3 brief vignettes that illustrate the 3 most important things I've learned at RES. And I think that they do a really good job of showing how this mission is executed through a hybrid model by stakeholders who are unified by a shared commitment to Christ and to the people of his church. The first is Catholic humility, and this was taught to me by Professor Brewer. Really briefly, I was assigned what for me was my first seminar paper, which is to briefly summarize and then interact with or critique the work of someone from the storied history of the church. And in this case, my first paper was Witzius and the Covenant of Works. And I read it and I wrestled with it because it was very difficult. And it was amazing, and it was hard, and it made my heart sore to read it. And then I sat down and thought, what do I want to write about this? And I'm taking classes and reading and thinking about with men like Jeffrey Myers and Jim Jordan and Peter Lightheart. And I think in my arrogance, I'm just going to go right at the covenant of works. And I, as Professor Brewer, remember, and I thought I was doing this with humility, but I really wasn't. I just lobbed out some very limp-wristed observations about perceived contradictions in the covenant of works and how it relates to the covenant of redemption and the covenant of grace. And in his response, Professor Brewer just asked me some very simple questions that really just illustrated how feeble my attempt was. And it cut me to the quick. And I asked him if he would meet me with me during office hours. And when we got there, I didn't want to argue grade. I didn't want to argue anything he said. I asked him straight off, how do I read and write better? Because I'm clearly not cut out for this. And he was very gracious with me. And he said, you know, Matt, when I started my studies, I had a lot of academic arrogance myself, and I felt the need to go at things like this. And he said, the number one thing that I learned was to be humble and to submit yourself to read closely and carefully the great works of the history of our church, the way that you would hope someone would read your writing, and not run off and interact with your own musings about what they wrote, but interact with what they wrote. And I can tell you that come finals week, I had 3 papers and 2 tests. I laid down on the ground and I thought, I will never get through this. I wonder how embarrassing it would be to quit seminary. And I went to the Lord and I just said, I can't do this. And I humbled myself before him. And he carried me through that week, one day and one assignment at a time. The second is pastoral care. I'm in a class right now in the Pentateuch with Professor Timothy Edwards, who is in London. Professor Brewer is in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in Fort Worth. So hybrid model at work. And we were set the task of reading the account of Korah's rebellion. And he had us read some more liberal scholars on the documentary hypothesis and why the only way that this makes sense, and read it for yourself if you've never done this, it was eye-opening to me. All the changes in narration, all the changes in point of view, all the perceived inconsistencies are only accountable under the documentary hypothesis. And then in the spirit of a good seminar, he just turned us loose, said, why is that not right? And we really thought on the edge of our ignorance to come up with biblical reasons for why it's written for the way it's written. And I even went off and talked about, well, it's a threefold rebellion because Moses is a threefold leader and there's a threefold result, really got over my skis. And at the end, he pulled us back in and he said, guys, that was awesome. Way to think out loud. Okay. What would you say if you were preaching on this, though? Because you may have come up with some really interesting things and you could maybe write a paper and get published. But if you go off half-cocked in front of your people and say something that you are not buttoned up on 100%, not only are you going to tell them something that's probably not right, which is bad enough in and of itself, you're going to teach them to be bad readers of the Word of God. And then your job will be impossible and their lives will be impoverished. It is a very humbling thing to think about, the care that we have to take after we do the close reading to actually bring this to people in our church. And then third, local service. My local pastor, who is my mentor, is Pastor Steve Jeffrey and his wife, Nicole, are lovely people. And Nicole pulled Allie aside while we were talking. I didn't realize what was going on, but while the conversation about, will we have Matt as someone we're mentoring in the MDiv program? And Allie told me she got to know her and asked her, how's seminary doing? And she didn't want to know what my grades were. And she wanted to know was, how is Matt doing as the head of his house and as your partner, as he's taking on all the reading that Professor Brewer is talking about? And it sometimes makes me choke up to say that Allie told me that what she said was, sometimes I don't even notice he's in seminary. And I said, is that really true? And she said, it's really true. And everyone who's gone into their study for 4 hours to do something away from their family knows that you long to hear that, because you have to make every moment count when you have so much work to do. And that's by the grace of God. And it's no one had to specifically tell me that at this seminary, but it's been clear that my number one job is to be a husband and a father and a churchman. And the rest of this we do as God's time allows. And Pastor Jeffrey drove that home when he sat down with me And he said, after sharing a lot of things with me, he said, look, if you want to do this, just keep this last thing in mind. He had tried to, give me all the horror stories, right? He said, if your family falls, that's it. There's no coming back from that. That is your job. And service starts at home, right? Local service in the church starts with local service in the home. And the reason that all of these sound like a bunch of people who all meet and pray together every day and are on exactly the same page, even though they're miles away, is because that's the character of this institution. It's getting people ready, Lord willing, for ministry in the trenches, where it's hard to keep your family, it's hard to keep your church, it's hard to keep your life together with the chaos that we face, but we have to do it if that's what we're being called to. And the hybrid model has been really lovely, and the men and women who have been responsible for it have made something really special and unique. So I'm sorry if I went over time, but that's all I have.
Great. That was great. Thank you so much. CJ, you want to just follow on with what Matt mentioned at the end there about the mentoring?
Absolutely. And Matt, thank you as well for mentioning the issue of work balance, work-life balance, the time commitments that are going to be involved. I should just say, generally, RES holds classes in the evenings. Again, we're across a number of time zones, so that's shifts a little bit depending on where you are, but it's generally weekday evenings, some Saturday classes as well. Right now, we're offering classes, usually 2 or 3 2-credit classes per term, so at about a half-time pace. Which works out to something like 7-8 years to complete the MDiv. So we recognize that many of you are not able to come at a full-time pace, and we're actually not at a full-time pace ourselves at this point. And so we recognize it's a long road and are grateful for the men who step up and faithfully chip away at the next class, next couple classes to do that. But yes, the other component is local mentoring. This is a critical aspect of what RES involves. And this is that point at which you're coming to us, ideally with a mentor, someone who's known you, an experienced minister, pastor, who, one, just recognizes with you your call to the ministry. Hopefully, he's the one who recommended you and sent you. It's not true in every case, but that's our goal and hope. Because we recognize that, yes, the hybrid model allows for these benefits. You can stay where you are, you can stay in your church, but it prevents us from taking on a role that really properly belongs in the local church anyway. To oversee men as they train for the ministry means not just taking classes, writing papers, reading books, and practice sermons, but actually delivering some sermons, actually serving the people, actually taking a role in the liturgical life of the community and getting your hands dirty and caring for and shepherding the saints. But that's not something to do without a guide, without a mentor. And so all of our MDiv students are required to have a pastoral mentor. We recommend that our MCS students, even our CCS students, meet regularly for mentoring, but it's a requirement for the MDiv program. I lead the mentoring program from RES's side. And so after each term, they submit a report detailing the meetings that have been had, topics that have been covered, and an assessment of the students term by term as we seek to watch not just doctrine, but also life of our students in the way that Matt outlined. And so the mentorship program involves you meeting face-to-face, one-on-one with a mentor, ideally in person, but online works as well, for at least 1 hour a month. So not a high necessary commitment, but a regular, faithful pattern of meeting together. We encourage you to meet more often as you can. I think we have 1 or 2 students who are able to do that weekly. That's a wonderful gift and benefit to them. But usually 3 to 4 meetings per term in our 11-week terms is what we expect. And those conversations are for discerning calling, examining your Christian life, your personal growth, your personal habits of discipleship, the tone of your home, how you're growing, as well as how you're doing in the seminary. So that's a side of things that the seminary is not able to do, but really is more properly rooted in the local church. So usually the students will know who that person is better than we can possibly do. And so they'll suggest a mentor, and I'll have a meeting with the mentor to introduce him to the program. Sometimes we're able to work with students to find them a local mentor when that presents a challenge. So we are able to work a little bit with you on that. But mentors are constantly in conversation with the seminary to help watch over our students as they progress through the program. That's a regular part of life at RES in the MDiv program. It's a great benefit to you and to the seminary and to your church.
Okay, thank you. I think I may have messed up my sharing there. I'll try to regroup here. Okay. So our next presenter will be Lauren Scheer, and she'll give an overview of the details of our involvement with the classes and admissions and all the things there. Lauren is the registrar and bursar for the seminary, and hopefully I can move forward. There it is. So we can talk about the resources and all the ways in which the seminary can connect you with the books and materials and the systems needed to do your studies. Lauren?
Yes, I believe Britton mentioned we don't have a physical library because we don't have a physical location, but we do offer our students access to a Logos library, which has a good number of titles available for you to access during your studies here. And that can be helpful for writing papers, for looking at other resources there. Populi is our learning management system. Everything is hosted in Populi. Your student account will be in there. Your classrooms will be in there. You won't have to switch around between different sites or log into something odd. It'll all be right there in Populi. Student directory is in there as well. I think many of you will enjoy that, hopefully. Current students do. We have a little bit of social activity that goes on in Populi. Not a ton, but students are able to chat with each other within the classes, and several students have groups where they study outside of classes as well. We have our monthly Capella lectures, and CJ could speak more to that and to special lectures as far as student life goes. Maybe you want to say a few words about that, CJ?
Sure. Each month we'll meet together, something like a chapel service, but also a little bit different. Usually there'll be one main presenter giving a talk as the core of what we do. But that's also a moment where we'll take the time to pray together, read scripture together, and as we're all gathered together as the seminary community, that happens on a monthly basis. And then occasionally we do have special lectures. Our most recent special lecture was to commemorate Reformation Day, and Reverend Jeff Myers gave an excellent lecture. Both the Capella and the special lectures are available on our YouTube page. They've been recorded, so if you want to go get a taste of what those are like, go find them on our YouTube page, and you can see our last few Capella and lectures there.
Yes, thank you. And we have an annual retreat, which we call our Refresh Retreat. We are in separate time zones, separate states, and that's part of the benefits of our model, but we also want to spend some time together physically and have embodied presence with each other, and we do that at our Refresh Retreat. This year we are planning it in Fort Worth, Texas, Matt Dealey's hometown, well, current town he lives in, and we're going to be doing an intensive course over the summer alongside that retreat. You can come and sit in a room with a pastor and get some pastoral wisdom and earn some credits face to face with a pastor. We don't get to do that very often, but we get to do that this summer. It's an intensive. It'll be pastoral wisdom with Dr. John Decker. All right, let's talk tuition. Our tuition schedule is pretty simple and straightforward, $200 a credit. And as I think has been mentioned before, most of our courses are 2 credits. So you're going to be looking at about 400 per course. If you take 2 courses per term, that's 800 per term, just in tuition fees. And then we have auditor fees if you're wanting to just audit a course, about half price for a credit. And we offer some other things as well. Enrichment courses are 1 credit courses that are taken for the price of a 1 credit course, and we offer listeners passes as well to various people. Now, if you are a church partner, or I should say if your church is a church partner, you actually get a 50% discount on tuition. So that'll be $100 per credit instead of the $200 per credit. And I believe the next screen, I have some more details on the church partner program. If you can, oh, maybe it's the one after that, but we'll stay here for a second. This is we can go back. This is our breakdown of fees for the year, or this is our breakdown of costs per student per year. Yes, what it costs us. Was there a fees slide? I'm sorry, Roy. We have tuition, we have costs. Global costs. Oh, we have church partner benefits slide here. Yes, that's right. So the church partner program is for your church to join. Your church pledges a certain amount every year for 3 years, and this amount varies based on congregation size, so that smaller congregations with maybe less financial standing can still enjoy the benefits of this program. The church pledges, if they're a less than 200 member congregation, $2,500, or more, they pledge $5,000 a year for every year for 3 years. And they designate 1 student to receive that benefit, which could be you, and you'd receive 50% off of all tuition, making each credit $100. So instead of that 400 a course, you'd be looking at 200 a course. There's also benefits to the church itself. We offer a church enrichment course every term, and we offer free listeners passes to that course for congregants, members of that church, so they can listen in on a course that you're taking it for credit, but they get to just listen in and get the benefit of that.
Would you like to go back to those previous slides, or do you want to move forward?
I think we can move forward without those today. All right, yes. For admissions, I wanted to show you just a sample application so that you can know what you're getting yourself into. Or if you've already started an application, you'll be able to see what a completed application looks like. So we will just go through that quickly here. This, of course, is the place on our website where you can apply, revseminary.com/apply. I want to draw your attention, first of all, our deadline for applying for spring term is February 15th. So 5 days from now, if you would like to be considered for entrance into our upcoming spring term, that's the date you want to get your application in. Along with your application, we're going to need a pastoral reference, and we will need your transcripts from any previous universities or work. And then we have deadlines for the next 2 terms listed on this page as well. You can come here and start your application here. Once you've started the application, it saves it for you, so you can always come back to it. You don't have to get it done in one fell swoop. Here's a completed application right here. We'll take a look at our applicant, John Calvin here, has submitted this application for the MDiv program. Some basic information you'll have to provide us, including any previous colleges or universities attended. Even if you've only attended a couple of terms, it's good for us to know that information. We want to know your home church and your current pastor's name and contact information. And if you're in the MDiv program, this is the time that you would nominate a pastoral mentor. We get a lot of questions about pastoral mentors. Who is eligible to be your pastoral mentor? We prefer it's somebody in your context, so in your local church is ideal. If you don't have somebody that immediately springs to mind, or you're having trouble knowing who would be a good mentor for you, please reach out to us, and we're happy to talk through options with you about who might be a good mentor in your case. But if you have someone in mind and they've agreed to do it, you can put them here, definitely. A couple of options, or sorry, a couple of uploads that we'll want to see from you is a photo, mostly to see that you are a real person. So give us a photo there. And then we'll want a writing sample from you. So a sample of your best writing. If it's been a while since you've done any academic writing, and you might have examples of other writing that shows us that you know how to think, you know how to put a sentence together. If you're not sure, again, you can reach out to us and we'll help you think through what might be some options for writing samples that you could show us to kind of show your academic ability. We'll want to know some personal goals and history, probably a little bit longer than this little bio of Calvin here, but something that tells us who you are, where you're from, and why you are coming to us, what you're hoping to gain from the program, something that tells us who you are and your background. We're going to want to see a financial statement from you, telling us how you intend to pay for seminary, any considerations there. And then a pastoral reference. We'll want that from you as well. We prefer if this is a pastoral reference that has known you more than 3 years. So if it's not your current pastor, if you have a pastor from a previous church, that is perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be your pastoral mentor either, but somebody who can speak to your character, your Christian walk, well, and who could give us a good reference for you and also for your calling and a sense of calling to seminary. If you have any credits from another seminary or institution that you'd like to transfer, just let us know about that as well. After you've submitted, or after you have completed this portion and click submit, there's going to be a $50 application fee that helps us cover the cost of processing your application. And we can't fully process your application until we receive your transcripts. So if you've not received your transcripts, we're not going to be reviewing your application, and I'll send you a little reminder about that. We also will need your pastoral reference to come in before we review your transcript. So again, I might send a reminder to your reference if they haven't filled it out. But all those things need to be in before we send it off to the admissions committee to review. And then we will let you know. The timeline for that is generally between 2 to 4 weeks, or 4 to 6. Now I can't remember what we generally take. CJ, maybe you can correct me on that, but we want about a month in between when you submit, just in case we have extra questions for you. We want to contact your reference maybe, or we would like some more supporting documentation. Leave yourself some time. Our deadlines close usually about 5 to 6 weeks before the start of term, so that we have time to do that. So definitely get it in as soon as you can. All right, that's all I have on admissions.
Okay. And if you want to touch on any other things, CJ or Lauren, that we may have missed getting here at this point, because the next thing we'll do is open it up for questions. So any last things you want to suggest, or maybe even Matt or Britton, if you want to say something that we may have missed at this point.
I'll just jump in real quick to highlight the church enrichment program. We haven't said a lot about that, but a couple of you are already serving as pastors, maybe not here for yourselves, but for your church considered more broadly. And even if you're just interested in a long-term relationship with the seminary, a church enrichment course might be a great place to get a sample of what we're doing. Maybe you're not ready to jump into taking classes. That would be an excellent way for you as a student or you as a pastor to encourage your congregants to come to a deacon training class, a premarital counseling class, one of the classes that we offer for church enrichment. That's all I've got.
Great. Thanks, CJ. Okay, well, if no other comments from our team, let's open it up to questions from our guest visitors today. And you may feel free to just speak up, or you can also write it as a question in the chat if you would like to do that, and someone else is already speaking. So questions from you.
I'll jump in with a question. Earlier in the presentation, somebody mentioned the average time required per credit, and I heard 500 hours of reading per credit. Is that correct?
That 500 pages of reading per credit hour. Yes.
So if you're reading
Sometimes
German,
it feels like 500 hours, but
yeah.
I hope I could read faster than that. That seems much more reasonable.
Yeah, maybe I could speak to the workload. The rule of thumb for planning these courses is you have 2 hours of at-home work for every 1 hour spent in class. So if you've got 2 hours spent in class on one class during a week, you're going to be spending 3, 4, maybe 5, depending on the week, hours on reading, maybe writing, or other assignments. So that's how you should plan your week. If you're taking 2 courses in a term, you might be looking at 15 to 20 hours of coursework a week. Maybe Matt can speak to how that works out practically as far as course load.
It does ebb and flow, and the level of reading of what essentially 1,000 pages, I found that pretty consistent over the last year. Professor Dorney made us read 2,000, I think, because we did the complete Josephus and the City of God, but but we had the whole term to do it. So no, I think what Lauren just laid out has been more or less my experience. Although I will say that a challenging aspect of starting to actually feel like you're getting good at this stuff and enjoying it is that it makes you want to really reach another level and spend more time on it than you would have otherwise. So I'm right now in the middle of a research paper for Pentateuch that I'm enjoying the research more than anything I've ever done before. So I may have to start triaging and focusing more on other classes or more on my daughter or more, Professor Atwood or President Atwood said something great at, I think, Convocation, which is don't underestimate the value of the tactical B. If you choose to get a B because you know you could do 5 hours more to get an A, but your wife and your child needs those 5 hours, give them to her, right? So again, we're in the trenches. We all have to kind of make it work for us. But I could not say that I've ever not completed an assignment on time because I didn't have enough time to do so. I've always had the time. I just have had to take it appropriately.
I might add to what you said, Matt, and that is it ebbs and flows, and it also ebbs and flows depending on the subject matter. So some classes, perhaps like systematics or some of those that could be, say, very densely philosophical or very technical theologically, might be very different from, say, a pastoral theology class that's talking about how to counsel with a person who's got a challenging moment in their life or something. So it might be very different sorts of material to be read. And so the one you just would have to figure is going to take more than the other books that are in an area that's less technical or philosophically demanding, intellectually demanding. So we have a question from Chris. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Do we select courses or are they prescribed at this point? CJ, you want to answer that? Or Lauren, you go.
Yeah, I'll answer that. We offer a certain number and subject of courses every term. You have the power to register for as many or as few courses as you think you're capable to handle or what you need in that term. So this last term we offered Greek 2. We offered Pentateuch, we offered a course on Trinitarian theology, and we offered an enrichment course on, now I'm blanking on what it's on. It's a counseling course, premarital counseling. So if you were like, I need to take Greek 2 this term, and I really don't have time to focus on anything but Greek 2, you're welcome to just take Greek 2. Be mindful that it may push your graduation time out if you're only taking one course a term, but people have their own timelines, and there may be times in your life where you're able to take more or less classes. This reminds me that one thing I had forgotten to do was I was going to share our upcoming courses. So let me just pull this up real quick.
CJ just posted it on the chat as well.
Excellent. Yes. So for our spring term course, we are offering Medieval Church with Dr. Dorney, who will hopefully lower his page count for our next round of classes. And then we're offering a Poetic and Wisdom Literature course with Dr. Smolaj, which should be really excellent. And then our enrichment course is dealing with death by Dr. Steve Jeffrey. So if you or your church signs up to be a church partner, you will get free passes for members of your congregation to this Dealing with Death course. That'll be our church enrichment course. And then over the summer, we're offering Common Problems in Counseling with Reverend Mike Ruff. And then Dr. Timothy Edwards is going to be teaching a Doctrine of the Word intensive. So those will be coming up as well. And you can see these on our website under upcoming classes.
Other questions?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask a bunch of questions around workload and supporting a family and also being a deacon in a church, but I think most of those have been answered as things have progressed. But I was curious too, like you mentioned you try to do as many live classes as possible, but there are videos if you aren't able to make a live class. I assume there's a tipping point when somebody comes to you and says you're missing too many live classes. Just with, I'm thinking I'm the manager of my team, a software team, and so like stuff comes up, and like what happens if you start missing too many live classes?
We do have public floggings, so that can be one response.
Yes.
No, we do try to make it clear that you need to be there for your classes. If you're unable to do it during a term, we recognize life happens and you sometimes need to pull back and sometimes withdraw. We do have students who will do that occasionally. If it's simply a temporary issue, for example, you've got some big thing you have to deliver in the next week and a half and you are just slammed with that, well, then you can say, talk to the teacher, say, I'm going to need to watch the videos, and shift my time around because I cannot get away for this right now. And just communication with instructors is really important that way. We also have students who are on the opposite sides of the world. We have students in Eastern Europe and even Africa, and those in Asia. And so they are 12 hours apart. And so some of them have had to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to join the live class. Not something you really want to do very often. So, and the solution for that has been typically to allow that student to watch the video of the lecture class, but then meet with the instructor live and other students perhaps during the like office hour time or something that's scheduled so that they can interact about the material that was presented. And then the lecture becomes kind of like a book. You watch the book, now you're going to discuss the elements that were raised in it. So all of that needs to be done. Now, some classes, that's more easily done than others. I would say that's probably much harder for, say, Greek and Hebrew. And maybe, Britton, you can address that challenge perhaps. But those are the ways we've typically handled it. But again, we try to accommodate as best we can, given the realities of both the zones that you're living in and the materials and life issues that confront you. Britton, do you want to say anything more about language study that way?
Well, I think, most of our language study, the way we've done it in the past, and I'm speaking as a Greek instructor, is more like a workshop where we do a lot of language work together. Generally, the basic grammar is actually pretty understandable. It's just repetition and guidance of a good instructor. So when we, at least in Greek, and I think in Hebrew, they may have done it a little bit differently, but we try to make it more of just live work in the original languages rather than traditional instruction.
Thank you. Jeremy, Scott, any other questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. Are you guys offering, I don't know how to put it, courses a la carte at this point? So I already have a MA, and I don't really, as much as I'd love to, I don't want to go back and do a whole MDiv, So, but I need to get some language work done in order to pursue ordination, and so I was wondering how would that work with you guys?
Again, others can address this, but we typically, because of the requirement of languages, we teach alternating years Greek and Hebrew. So you could jump in any year and take all the Greek class or all of the Hebrew classes, or at least over 2 terms that way. And of course, it's not taught out of sequence, so you would need to start with the first to get into the second. So there is that sequencing problem, but we alternate it every year. So if you only have time for one a year, you could start with Hebrew 1, but it would not be taught until the following year and a 2 years, because in between will be the Greek. So Hebrew, then Greek, then Hebrew. So it's best to do them sequentially, pedagogically.
Right. So, but you'll allow students just to take the courses without being enrolled in a program then.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
Go ahead, Lauren.
One way you could do that is you could do our certificate program. It has a very slim number of required courses, and then the rest you can build in electives that you are particularly interested in and curate it that way. We also offer a program called the non-matriculating student program that allows you to take a certain number of credits in a calendar year, or in an academic year, I should say. But we have a couple of students in just Greek or in just Hebrew, or in the languages, who are in our non-matriculating student program, and they're there to do just those courses that they're particularly interested in without working towards a degree. So that is an option. And on that application page that I showed, you can do the drop-down menu. There's a non-matriculating student application there.
Lauren, could you perhaps answer Ian's question that he texted there?
Yes. Yeah, we may consider Ancient Language Institute as a language credit. I couldn't answer definitively without seeing which courses that you had taken, but I would be happy to look something over if you had something already that you wanted to send over. Be in contact with me. I put my email in the chat there. So yeah, we consider them for sure.
And transfer credits can be done from any graduate level program, or if you had a sort of advanced studies within an undergraduate situation, we might consider that for meeting something of a content requirement, but you might just then substitute it with another course for the credit component. So we have dealt with transfers before. Yep. And you're most welcome. Jeremy, any question for you?
The only question that I had is, do you guys tend to work kind of 2 terms out before you know what's coming up in advance? Or do you have like a yearly catalog? Because I'm really, I love what you guys are doing, but I'm interested in how to equip men in our church, or even the church enrichment courses sound really interesting to me, but trying to kind of foresee where that will land. I'm kind of trying to get ahead of things.
Yeah. We are planning roughly, 3 years out or so. But we can't, or 4, we really can't publish what those courses will be, because we still have to align. We could say we want these courses to be taught, and then it turns out we cannot get the instructor to be able to teach it during that time. So then we have to shift it around and do those sorts of things. So it's always a bit of a juggling act, but we try to be more ahead of things with each year, with each passing year. So again, we're still relatively new as an institution, so some of these things are growing over time. The other thing that will grow over time is as our cohorts increase in number. So we have students that are just starting, and those who are 4 years in. But we're going to have classes for all those different people at different stages. And so we will have more and more courses become available, and those will be planned out more in the future. So people at different levels will be able to do more or less according to that. And at some point, what that will allow us ultimately is to probably allow people who really want to just dive in full time. They have the opportunity, capacity to do that. They could start taking full-time seminary studies. We can't do that right now, but we may be able to do that in the future. But our enrichment courses, we try to publish at least the 6 months to a year out. And our most popular ones have been the elder training and deacon training for the churches. CJ, you want to add anything on that?
No, I think that's right. We are attempting to plan out further than that, but right now it's about 2 terms. Maybe the best way to get a sense of things would just be to reach out. And if you're comfortable with that, this is what we hope, but the plans are not firm until we publish them. And of course, under the providence of God, that all might get turned over the day before class starts. But the general feedback, if you want to know what's on deck for the next couple of years, just reach out to one of us and we can give you that general sense.
And
And
then,
we have upcoming courses on the website too.
and then with the retreat, right now you guys do that in Texas. How long is that precisely? And then would there be the potential to do something like that in the Pacific Northwest?
We just did last year's in Oregon City on the Oregon coast, near Tillamook and Rockaway Beach. We may be moving it around a little bit to try to get different regions. Some of the places where more students are. There's a lot of students down in the Texas and central Southwest. But yeah, we're looking for other venues to do it. But of course, we're biased that the Northwest is the most beautiful place to go. So, it'll probably be out here more often than that.
And that is primarily a retreat for present students, or is that actually like an instruction kind of condensed time?
Well, it will be an intensive class.
Okay.
So it's one could take.
Okay. And that's for a week or 2 weeks or?
That's a really intensive one. That's the 3 days.
Okay.
And I think we start on Wednesday or Thursday and go through Saturday.
Yeah, it's 1 credit intensive, so we can do it in 2 days. Yeah. You'll be sitting in a class a lot, but you'll get the information down.
And the Refresh Conference is really intended to be a time for fellowship and getting to know each other on a personal face-to-face basis and not through the online experience. Well, we promised to keep this to about an hour, so I think we probably should bring it home. I want to thank everyone for being here, our presenters, as well as our prospective students and pastors. If you have any questions about any of the things that we've talked about or things that pop up in your mind later, please do reach out to any of us for answers, and we would be delighted to be able to help you in any way. And I should mention the pastors in particular, if you have ideas for church enrichment classes, things that your church really needs certain help with, throw that idea to us. That might be this, we can pull somebody together to teach such an enrichment class. So we're wanting to help the church. We're here to serve the church, and that's a great way to help us do that better. So thank you, Matt, Britton. Thank you all of our guests, and we wish you a blessed evening. God bless you all.
Good night, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye now. See you, CJ.